This is how we ride. This is how we do.
And I'll tell you what, something that is about just as bad as Ross Chastain wall riding or course cutting was this situation here with the last lap of Ty Gibbs and his teammate Brandon Jones. If you haven't seen it, here's what happens. Going down into the final restart for this Xfinity race at Martinsville, the Dead on Tools 250. Brandon Jones does a little bit of a bump, sends his teammate up the track to make a move. This is how you race at Martinsville. This is what you do to race at Martinsville. He gets the spot cleanly, and now he drives down into 1 and 2 and just gets spun. Hitting the left rear quarter panel, we know how that is. That's what happens. That's what's going to occur. And this was for a championship spot. Ty Gibbs is already into the championship. His teammate, Brandon Jones, was not. If he wins, he is definitely in. And this is what occurs between them. There was some responses to this, and I think Noah Gragson had the funniest one.
And I wouldn't be too happy. Like, he's showing a lot more composure than I would be right now. But I guess you kind of got to deal with that when you're driving that Joe Gibbs racing car.
The Joe Gibbs racing car. Everyone knows exactly what Noah Gragson is saying here. And it is so sad how a mixture of nepotism and monarchy has taken over NASCAR. At the end of the day, Kyle Busch wasn't pushed out of this Joe Gibbs racing ride. I think most people could tell. This is what I think. He wasn't pushed out of that Joe Gibbs racing ride because they couldn't find sponsorship. He was pushed out of that Joe Gibbs racing ride because of nepotism and monarchy, because Joe Gibbs and the families, they want their little kitty to be a big NASCAR star and race a car for us. Now, as far as this situation is concerned, in this intentional spin, I think that, weirdly enough, Bubba Wallace had it right. Look at what Bubba Wallace said when he spoke on the penalty that he had from Las Vegas for intentionally wrecking Kyle Larson, which is what he was punished and suspended one race for. Look at what he said on the eve of this race. Listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, I totally accept the penalty and the repercussions that came from my actions. I talked to O'Donnell and I talked to Phelps, and I said, hey, I'm good with being the example, is if we can keep this consistent moving forward, because it's happened multiple times this year, and it's something that may still continue to happen, for other drivers down the road. I've definitely learned my lesson, but we have to be consistent with this, no matter if it's here at Martinsville or if it's at Daytona or Talladega. We got to keep it consistent across all the boards and all the series. So that was the conversation. It was a good conversation.
There you go. Now, what is he actually saying when he says all that? So, what happened with Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace? Everybody kind of knows it. Bubba Wallace felt like he was roughed up a little bit through 3 and 4. Bubba Wallace turns his car and wrecks Kyle Larson, and that act in itself, in retaliation or not, that intentional wreck is why he was suspended that race. And what did we just see, ladies and gentlemen? What did we just see Ty Gibbs do to his teammate, Brandon Jones? The restart down here, Ty Gibbs is the leader. And what happens? What happens? Brandon Jones gets into it, roughs him up a little bit, pushes him up the track. Okay, we're not racing for fifth like Bubba and Larson was. But apparently, Brandon Jones just roughed Ty Gibbs up a little bit to get the lead. And now we're going down to 1 and 2, and what happens? Everybody knows what happens when you hit cars in the left rear of the car. Everybody knows what happens when you drive across the track and hook someone in the right rear of the car on a straightaway. We all know what that action is. That is an intentional wreck. That is a retaliational wreck. Now, the last lap, as you see on your screen here, Brandon Jones moved Ty Gibbs. And now what did Ty Gibbs do? Brandon Jones just roughed him up, pushed him up the track the right way, centered his bumper. But what did Ty Gibbs do? He came down here, hit him in the left rear, and intentionally wrecked his own teammate out of self-greed, nepotism, and monarchy protection. So, with all things being considered, ladies and gentlemen, what Bubba Wallace's conversation with NASCAR is, hey, if we're going to suspend people for retaliational, intentional style wrecking, that it needs to be what? What, Bubba? Hold on. Let's get him. Let's hear him say it one more time.
Example is if we can keep this consistent moving forward, because it's happened multiple times this year, and it's something that may still continue to happen, for other drivers down the road. I've definitely learned my lesson, but we have to be consistent with this, no matter if it's here at Martinsville or if it's at at Daytona or Talladega. We got to keep it consistent across all of them.
Got to keep it consistent. So that is what he's saying. If you're going to take a race from me for intentionally wrecking in a heated fashion, then we need to do the same thing for people who intentionally wreck at Martinsville or Daytona, Talladega. It shouldn't matter to the track. And if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, if NASCAR is going to listen to ration and listen to the truth, then this wreck right here, conducted by Ty Gibbs, is going to deserve a one-race suspension. Now, will NASCAR do that, is the question. Now, the unfortunate thing about NASCAR doing that to Ty Gibbs versus Bubba Wallace, as much as you people think that NASCAR favors Bubba Wallace, and they more than likely do at some times for social purposes. Media does it, CNN, Fox, they play sides, all of them. But when you start talking about Ty Gibbs, this is where you get down to who really runs things. This is where you get down to generational wealth. This is where you get down to who gets treated how because of who they actually are. Joe Gibbs, tied in with Toyota the way that he is, they're not going to treat Ty Gibbs like Bubba Wallace. He's going to get favoritism because that's what he has to receive, because he controls a piece in the game. He owns land. Does that not make sense? He owns land in NASCAR. And you get treated different when you own land. This is the true power structures of the world. This is how it works. Should Ty Gibbs be suspended for one race? I mean, why not? He did. If we want to keep it consistent, like Bubba just said, why not be suspended for one race? Why not? He did intentionally wreck his a driver, his teammate, unfortunately for him, but he did intentionally wreck a driver, and it's plausible to say in a somewhat retaliational position. So why is he not suspended for one race? Oh, he's not Bubba Wallace? Or is it more so, he's a part of the people who own land in the game called NASCAR? It's so sad. True supremacy. He's a part of the supremacy of the sport. There is supremacy in NASCAR. There is supremacy in the world. But it is not necessarily, dabbled up based on white or black supremacy. It's based in supremacy, period. And all these other distractions of white, blacks, this side, that side, is simply what supremacy needs to exist. A really good distraction.
But this is how we ride, this is how we do.